Welcome to Monday Morning Express. We're going to take you today back out to Bill Borin. It was a very interesting interview the first time, and what's going to be neat today, we'll see even a little more of the manufacturer side of it. And that's one of the things I really enjoyed talking about Bill with.
Yeah, it's going to be nice to see a follow-up to the previous one you had there with him, Dan. And also, we're going to be going back to Ukiah, California, Mr. Bill Peter of PBL. What an excellent solderer he is. He's going to teach us a little bit about resistance soldering. We know we've had some in the past of just a standard soldering iron, but that resistance soldering iron is the way to go.
And he puts the fingertips and soldering tips.
We're going to see.
Yeah. And one of I think our most popular episodes, Roland, is having Bob Darwin last week.
Oh.
We have just got a flood of emails. We've seen it on the forums. We've gotten phone calls. The guys, our viewers, really loved Bob Darwin. And there's more great footage with him that we're going to share with you today, how he dealt with some of the importers, and we'll talk a little bit more about his layout.
Absolutely. So looking forward to that. Anything else?
I think that's it. Let's get started. Going back to our early talks, I think what's interesting is most of the people we've talked to are importers, but you really were, in essence, the builder or the manufacturer. That's the level you were involved in.
Yeah, the pictures I showed you was almost all of them are in production meetings where we're discussing, well, how are we going to do this and how are we going to do that and who will be the vendors, and this guy, his quality of lost wax castings are not up to our new standards. And so let's find somebody that can do it. And there were a litany of people that could do these various things. It was just a matter of finding them. The one I liked was a guy that had his shop on the first floor of his house, second floor he lived, and they would make the parts for KTM during one day, and the son would get on his bicycle with in the front of it, he'd put all these parts and ride all the way to KTM's factory, so they'd be there by, I guess, 7 o'clock.
Wow.
So that day, it was just-in-time inventory management, because all the facilities were very, very small. You didn't have big factories,
Right.
For most things.
Yeah, that's fascinating. You were saying even like the gauge or the quality of the brass, those are all things that you tried to make sure they kept the level high.
Yeah, especially the thickness of the brass that was used and the quality of the brass. And a lot of people don't know in metallurgy there are various standards,
Right. You told me kind of a neat story when you were over there in Japan.
Well, you have to understand, I was principal in what we would make.
Right.
And so I had these ideas that I really wanted to see go into the market. And one of the things was a super detailed set of Commonwealth trucks. Mm-hmm. Now, I was sitting in this meeting and I said, I would really like to see this done, but I need it fast because I'm going to be going back to LA and I'd like to have something to show. And one of the engineers there said, well, it's going to take me 3 weeks to do that. And I said, well, that's too long. And he said, well, I'm sorry, that's just it. Now, it's about 11 o'clock in the morning. I said, oh, that's okay, don't worry about it. I've got the German factory, they could make it in about a week, and that's okay, then I'll have it in LA, And we went to lunch. And so I came back, and at about 3:30 in the afternoon, I had this perfect set of Commonwealth trucks sitting at my desk.
Go figure. So it was amazing the capabilities they had.
Oh, if they wanted to, they would do it.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
What they were getting into many times in the arguments about what we should build was they didn't think it could be sold.
Okay.
That was really it.
Right.
I'm trying to express this nicely.
No, I think that's really an interesting point of view.
Yeah, if they didn't think it could be sold, they'd say, well, we don't want to do it.
Right.
And their way of not wanting to do it is, well, we can't do it.
Right.
And so I had this fake German company that I would reference.
We'll get it done over there.
Yeah, I'll just get it done over there. That'll be their project, And then for the Germans to beat them out on something was just
They didn't want that.
They didn't want that to happen at all. It was a really good group of guys. I mean, the engineers there were. I couldn't believe how capable they were and how interested they were in making a quality product. And that's why when I started seeing some of the models they had on display that they had made in the 60s that were they were Japanese prototypes.
Right.
They were so absolutely detailed completely and painted just beautifully. I said, we got to do this for this country. And that's the way it's ended up. I mean, you can't really sell something that is very austere.
Right.
Like the LMB original products. And they weren't bad. I mean, the guy, did what he could do.
History,
yeah,
but
sure.
That's about it. Yeah.
But, you got to have an air pump, for Christ's sake.
Yeah. Now, I noticed your approach was interesting, like behind us, and we'll show it. You have this giant blown-up poster of a Union Pacific model, and it really gives you a feel for the quality and detail when you see it blown up like that.
That's what I wanted to show. If you would take, a model that's probably as big as my fist, like that on my front,
right,
and make it 50 times bigger,
right,
what would it look like?
That's a great question.
That picture shows.
Yeah, I really like that.
It looks like a real engine if it wasn't brass, just painted.
Right. Now, another question I have for you, because just looking around your offices, you have a lot of the early Japanese pieces, the really high-quality Japanese pieces, like we mentioned, right up to the latest Korean models. How do you compare the two? I mean, do you have one you love, or do you just love everything? Or?
Well, part of the importance of collectors is they're insisting on higher and higher and higher quality. And I find that the Koreans have really gotten on board with that. They came out with some stuff that was, Northwest Shortline brought in a caboose, I remember, that was even distorted. And
the disaster series.
Yeah, and they loved it, and they did an interesting job of promoting it.
Interesting. Yeah, it was fun.
But it went from there to the excellence that is seen today.
Well, thanks for taking a few minutes with us, and maybe we'll just look around your offices a little bit.
You can do it.
You were telling me a little story when we started looking at this Chicago Northwestern 484.
Well, this is a Sufui engine, hand-built, hand-painted, of course. And why it represents a lot to me is my grandfather was a conductor on a Chicago Northwestern train. And when I was a young boy, very young, he would take me in the summer when I wasn't in school, sit me on the engine, and I would ride it out to some point and then back. And that was about a 12-hour total cycle. And I loved the smell of it. I loved the smoke. I loved everything about it. And after that, then the steam and all the noises and everything. And after that, I just needed to be around trains all the time.
So that really ignited your, your love of trains,
absolutely.
Which has led to all of this.
And of course, my first train, he bought me, it was a Lionel train. And it was really a good Lionel train. And I don't know if I would get that same train for somebody as young as I was at the time.
Right.
But it was the Lionel Hudson.
Okay.
New York Central Hudson. And a bunch of cars. And that was pretty good because, see, that was during the Depression. And nobody had much money at all. But that was something he really wanted me to have.
Wow.
But so that engine, especially because it's a Sufui engine, as well as a Chicago Northwestern.
Yeah, it means something. That's a really nice story.
Makes me feel good.
Now, some of your boys, they picked up your love of detail, it seems, because they're both kind of in the film industry a little bit.
Yeah, they are in the film industry, and one's a director, doing real well, and the other is a colorist, editor.
And then more importantly to our viewers, he also loves trains, doesn't he?
Oh, yeah. he calls me up every now and then because he has your website.
Yes,
And
we're glad he does.
And he'll be in Kiev, for example, and say,
Right.
"Hey, I want this piece. Would you get it for me?"
Yeah, well, we appreciate the business.
So
That's great.
yeah.
Now, last thing I want to ask you, Bill, is like almost everybody we've stopped and seen that collects trains also collects something else, and you collect art, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
and you were
do.
telling me this is a real special piece behind you.
Yeah, it is. It's a piece that my first wife's art teacher painted, and it won the Emily Lowe prize, which is like the first prize for the painting in the country for that year. And I just love it.
But it also makes me feel like you're the perfect person to ask because, you know, you've been involved in the manufacturing, you're literally an art collector. There's kind of this battle of minds. I mean, do you feel brass trains are a form of art?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. There's good art and bad art,
Yeah,
you know,
that's a good point.
and it's how you treat the art.
Well, thanks again, Bill, for
All right,
inviting us
hey.
in, your hospitality. We
Good.
sure have had a great time. I enjoyed being able to ask Bill when I was out there if he feels brass were a work of art, because he's a brass collector
Sure.
and an art collector. So hopefully that solves that question. One of these days we got to put that thing to bed and just admit brass trains can be a work of art.
Yes, they are. I would agree wholeheartedly.
So we're about to head back out to Ukiah, as we mentioned in the outset. But
Yeah.
speaking of Jimmy Booth, we have a little
Yeah.
update about the big boys.
Yes, so many of you who have your models, they're back here with us now. So we have great news. Jimmy's going to be here December 5th. So here shortly, and we'll get those taken care of. We're even told that it's a even simpler fix than he thought at the outset. So all of those will be taken care of very quickly here in just a couple of days, and we'll get your models right back out to you. So just wanted to bring our audience up to speed on the progress of the big boys.
All right, well, let's head out and get some soldering tips from the master. So we're here in Bill Peters' workshop. But not
Bill Peters' bench.
Where the magic happens, though.
It's not Bill Peters' bench.
Jimmy's Booth's bench.
This is Jimmy's workbench. Yeah.
That's Jimmy's workbench.
Right.
But what do we have here? We have the original hot tip, right?
That's the one I got. Yeah,
Number
Look at
one.
that.
Yeah.
Number one. Yeah.
Still working.
Oh, absolutely. Nothing
So-
ever goes wrong with them.
Now, for the viewers that have seen your original video on soldering, why don't you give us a little hello there?
Hello there.
Brings back memories.
Yeah.
Now, Bill, a lot of people are super intimidated by working on their brass, and they're scared of resistant soldering. What do you have to say to those people?
Watch the video.
Okay, and they don't have to be scared, right?
No, they don't have to be scared. It's all common sense stuff. Basically, this works out on the same principle as a spot welder, in a sense. In as much as this thing will direct the heat exactly to where you want it to be, and you notice it's not hot.
Right.
And it's only hot when I pressed on the foot pedal, and then it's only hot. It won't even be hot here. See, nothing happens.
Right.
Because it's not grounded. It has to be grounded.
Okay.
That's how it works.
And of course, this is the pencil one, and you also have the tweezers.
Yeah, we have the tweezers
Right?
also,
Yeah,
sure.
okay.
Yeah.
So both of those on the unit.
Yeah, sure.
Excellent. Now, you're going to show us a little bit here about how to go ahead and put, the piece back on, to solder it back on.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is just go ahead and take a look at this a little close up for our viewers so that they can see exactly how it's being done, okay?
Sure. This cooling coil is not stuck on here, so I'll put a little bit of flux here, and there's already some solder. It's been tinned, but I'll show you how to stick it on here very easily. You go like this. First I got to see where it goes. It'll fit on here like this. All right, that's one side. And then we
You got
this.
amazing fingertips.
Well, believe it or not, I'm not burning myself. It isn't that hot. You can probably see the solder flow there. And I would think that's probably about where we want it.
And of course, when you see the solder flow, that's an indicator, isn't
Oh
it?
yeah, that's sure, it's done.
Absolutely. Okay, and tug on it for us there a little bit.
Huh?
We can tug on it a little bit. Look at that, solid as can be.
No, that's stuck. You won't get that off.
Wow. Very good. Nice little quick repair right there. Excellent job.
Wasn't any rocket science.
Right.
And you saw a little bit of flash here, and that was because of the heat.
And your fingertips are still okay.
My fingertips are okay. This thing's still not hot.
That's great. Mine still get a little sensitive.
Well, I'm not Iron Man.
There you go. But a nice job, Bill. We certainly appreciate you showing this little tip.
Yeah, sure.
And I think it's a tool that just everybody that owns brass probably should have, right?
Yeah, I think so too. If you're working on brass,
Right.
you need a torch, you need a soldering iron, and you need this thing.
Right.
But you're going to find more use for this than anything else.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've been using mine for many, many years.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's the first one.
That's the first one. And we were trying to figure out when I got this. I think it was 1966.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you have a little story behind it for us? Or we're gonna get into that in a little bit.
Yeah.
We're gonna get into the story. We have it on camera. We
I
have
got
to.
plenty of stories.
But for our viewers, it was worth the trip just to see the original #1 hot tip. It's really not that hard, Roland.
I'll tell you what, I got this train, and why don't you go ahead and hold that, and let me touch this pedal down here. Yeah, it's a little different. So Bill's fingertips are, they have to be so callous that he really doesn't feel the heat, but boy, he sure is the master on this hot tip soldering unit.
Yeah, I'm too sensitive to do that in real life.
I don't know if he's good enough, but that's another MME.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, we want to get everybody back out to that second part with Bob Darwin. I'm sure you're going to enjoy this just as much as you enjoyed last week's segment. I know you worked with a lot of the importers through the years. Al Coulson with Challenger, Tom Marsh with Overland, even a little with Dan McKee at Key.
Right.
Talk to us a little bit in Fred Hill, Coachyard, you work a lot. So tell us a little bit, because I think a lot of our viewers don't understand some of what goes on behind the scenes in research and design. So how did you help?
Okay, I think the first time I was approached to do this was with Dan McKee. This has to be back in the 70s. I forget which model it was, but Dan called me and he said, I'd like you to consider doing this project with me. And I said, well, if I had the material, I'd be happy to consider it. So we went through 3 or 4 different ones that he was working on. I think he was probably the Santa Fe 484, but I'm not sure about that. But anyway, I said, yeah, I've got all the drawings for that. I've got a lot of photographs. So what I did usually for an importer was I prepared a package. And the package included all the photographs that I had of that particular locomotive or car, whatever it was. And if I had the drawings, the erection drawings, I would include those. And then also I would render drawings in HO scale of how I felt it should be done in HO scale. And in many cases, I didn't have all the drawings, but I usually knew where to find them, and I wouldn't submit a project until I had enough material that I knew the importer could supply the builder with the material that could build a decent model. If I didn't supply enough material to produce a good model, I wouldn't submit it. I'd say, I'm sorry, I can't do it. And I had the most luck, I think, with Tom Marsh at Overland. Tom and I got along famously and beautifully. At the time, Tom knew that I had a lot of UP material, so we started out with UP equipment. And over the years, I must have done 20 different projects with and for Tom. And I loved doing it. He was a great guy to work with. He listened to my proposals, my suggestions, where a lot of importers didn't, and I wouldn't work with them.
Yeah. Because once you got involved, you wanted it to be right.
I wanted it to be right, exactly. Fred Hill. I've known Freddie so long, probably 45 years or more. It's more than that. It's more than 50 years. We call each other Bobby and Freddie,
Right.
Like 2 junior high school kids.
Sure.
And we often have discussions and disagreements, but in the end, we always come out okay. I love Freddie, and he's a tough customer.
Yeah.
But in the end, he's a good guy because we always come out
swinging in the end, and it always seems to work out. Sometimes not as well as we wanted it to, but right now we're working on that M10004 project.
yeah.
you
So
know.
you're helping out with that. That's an
Yeah.
exciting project.
Yes, because we want the thing to be articulated correctly.
And to this day, you were telling me you're fighting these guys
We're
building
still
it.
fighting the builders in trying to get a decent arrangement, a prototypical arrangement.
Right.
I want it to be to work the way the real train works.
That's what we all want.
I mean, why fight the real railroad? Because they knew what they were doing. The real builders, you know, Baldwin, Alico, they all knew exactly what they were doing.
So how about Al Ickelson? You have any good stories with him?
Oh
or-
yeah, Al was he was something else. A lot of people didn't like Al. He was a tough customer,
Yeah.
but he came to me, and we did several big projects together. I told him right off the bat, you know, that if I was going to get involved with him, I wanted to do it the way I'm telling you to do it. And if you don't want to do it that way, fine, I'll just not do the project. You know? And one of the first things I said to him, I said, you know, I want to do, if you want to do passenger cars, I want those trucks sprung. Why do you want them sprung? So I had to go through the whole rigmarole again with Al, and I explained to him why they had to be sprung, you know.
It's a reoccurring theme here.
It's a reoccurring thing, exactly, you know. But finally, he did. And we did the Pennsylvania Southwind, and he sprung the entire train. Not only did he spring every truck, he had them do it properly. Every casting was filed and cleaned before the journals were inserted. The dog bones were put on. The proper strength springs were put in so that when you put the car on the track, those springs worked. Today, that is still my best sprung train that I have. I have 50
Really?
different trains.
It sells
Wow.
It
fabulously
works
well.
beautifully.
Yeah.
And it only takes one K4 to pull it.
Wow.
One little K4.
Yeah, it's a beautiful set.
Yeah.
Is that one of your favorite projects you were
Oh,
involved
absolutely,
in?
yeah.
Yeah.
Because it was done right.
Right.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the next one wasn't done that well. He said, well, it's too expensive, you know. And the biggest excuse always was, well, most of the people that buy from me are collectors. They're not operators. Well, I don't believe that.
Yeah, we're trying to dispel that because I think most collectors still want to at least be able to operate their model.
I should think so. I mean, they're paying that
They're paying
price
for it, right.
for a beautiful model. Why shouldn't they? I mean, you don't have to have a layout of your own. You can run it at the local,
Right.
someone's local layout. You know?
Or even a small layout, you still want to be able to operate it. Unfortunately, we have seen strides in that. You know, a lot of things have gotten better.
Hopefully, yeah.
But guys like yourself, again, it goes back to what we're saying. We still, because I think that as much as we appreciate the builders, the Japanese builders, the Korean builders, and what they've done and the art behind it, those guys aren't looking to keep pushing the detail and the improvements. They want to just.
They're not.
So we have to push them, and the
Same.
modelers have to push the importers, and that's where we get the improved product.
I think some of the recent products, certainly the Vision Point and UTI, Brewrim is an incredible builder. I think they do an excellent job. And these projects are well designed.
Right.
I have not worked with either of those two importers, but so I think, like Jimmy Booth, I think his models, Jimmy, keep it up.
Yeah.
They are beautifully done. Jimmy knows what he's doing because he has a great interest in trains like I do, and to do things properly. And I think UTI and Division Point,
Yeah, they're pretty serious about a good operating
very,
model.
very serious about it, yeah.
So here's a question for you, Bob. As a guy who's been behind the scenes, do you think actually, even though these are quite expensive, we're getting a good value for our dollar with what really goes into them?
Absolutely. I think we're getting a better value today than we've ever got, regardless of what the price is. You look at a current UTI model.
Right.
There is more detailing on that model and more beautifully rendered than any previous model of the same, the same train.
Right.
The comparison is like night and day. I mean, seriously, it really is.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think the value is there. Yes.
Good. Now, part of the reason you like operating and care about it so much is you have a beautiful layout.
Yeah.
So talk to us about the layout you're building just a little bit.
He stole my question.
Oh, did I?
How about your layouts?
Yeah.
No, the layout I have now, I'm lucky enough to have a 70 by 30 room, which it's actually a horse barn. Back in the 60s, I was raising thoroughbred horses, and the barn came with the property, and that's why I did it. But when I got rid of the horses, which was about 20 years later, I had this building. And I thought, gee whiz, I finally have a nice big place to put a layout. So what I had to do first was, actually, I had to enlarge it. It was broken down, it was rat infested, so we went down to the studs, started from scratch. I built the building out as far as I could go. Unfortunately, there's a drainage ditch beyond that. I can't go any farther than that, because all the water from the top of the mountain all comes down behind my barn. So we put in the proper conduit, for the drainage. Put in a whole new cement floor, leveled everything out, and built this structure. And like I said, I think it's about 72 feet long and about 32 feet wide. And most of that is taken up with this layout. And the design entails 5 different layers. That might sound like a heck of a lot, but it's very simple. The lower layer is the storage yard. There's a 12-track storage yard about 60 feet long. I can put all kinds of stuff down there. And then on either end of the layout, I have a helix, which is actually 10 feet in diameter. It's a 60-foot radius.
Yeah, I think we're showing that picture right now, actually. Yep.
Yeah, 60-inch radius.
Yeah, 60-inch radius, which you said equates to a 1-inch grade, or
Right,
basically, right? 1% grade.
At
A
1%.
60-inch radius equates to a 1% grade.
Right.
And I come up, 4 layers, and I can actually take a track off on each layer if I want to, but I'm not. I'm just bringing it up to the top layer, which is where the Cheyenne engine terminal will be. And also on the other side of the layout will be mountains and running tracks, okay, that go all the way around the entire structure. On the 4th layer is the LAUPT, the Los Angeles Union Passenger Terminal, which I built in its entirety, all 17 tracks, terminal tracks, plus the 6 storage tracks. Yeah,
That was it, right?
Oh, we're seeing that.
Yeah, and it's almost to scale. It's like 4/5 to scale. I had to shorten it just slightly, but I didn't shorten the storage tracks, the terminal end of it. I shortened the part between terminal tower and mission tower, because it's outside of the area. In the reality, it curves around, the county jail, and it's another half a mile, before it gets to the main lines. That I thought was not necessary here. So we go immediately to a Y, and the Y is where I turn the trains around. Okay, so when a train comes into the terminal, we disconnect the power, we back it out this way, come around that way, and then go back in on another track, then pull the engines around and do the same thing, and then we can go, there we go again.
Why not?
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Well, that's what they do in real life, except, they go a little bit farther to turn the train around. They take it all the way down to the passenger yards, the coach yards.
You had a question for him on how he gets on his back and does all that wiring, right? Under the layout.
Yeah. How do you do that?
Okay, that is a good question, because when I was a kid, that's what we did. We got like I forget what they call them, a little, like a roll around thing
Scooters?
with wheels on it.
Right.
We laid
Like you're a car mechanic,
Yeah.
right?
we lay down there and we would wire the thing. It was laborious, and I hated it.
Yes.
And I thought, we're not going to do it that way anymore. So now we do it in pieces. The layout
Great
is
idea.
constructed in pieces. And after we put all the track in, the track got to go in first. Then we take that piece out, turn it over, and put in all the switch machines and wire the whole thing before we turn it back over and take those wires and bring it into where all the wires come together.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a
And
brilliant
it's
idea.
clean. It's so
Yeah.
clean.
And it's so easy to do.
Yeah,
I mean, I can wire, say one turnout motor and wiring 10, 15 minutes.
Right.
You do it underneath, it takes you all day to do that,
And for an old guy like me, it's hard.
It's very hard.
Especially because you want it nice and precise and
That's it.
clean and neat. Yeah.
And that's the beauty of it. When you have it right in front of you, you can get it precise.
Right.
Yeah, and you want to get those turnout motors exactly positioned right so you don't have to go back under it and redo them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the way it's done, and we've taken plenty of photos. These will probably be in MR again sometime soon to show all the modelers exactly how to do this. It's very simple, but very easy to do, and when you're done, you won't have a bad back.
Ed, talk to us a little bit about the relationship between you and Chuck. Give us an idea of what each of you does.
Right. So Chuck and I, it's a pretty complementary relationship regarding the business itself. So we each take responsibility as a project manager for our own projects. So we both are modelers. We both are passionate about this thing. I talked about one of the tenets of our business, but we only build things we want. Right, so we don't shop our services to others for other models. One of us has to want it before we'll commit to a project. Each of us project manage those projects that are near and dear to us. So for Chuck mostly handles passenger trains, passenger cars, passenger components. I did the SDP 45s. I'm doing the PA project. Also the cross mafia, so mostly diesels and or more modern things. I did the DODX flat cars. So from a project management perspective, we take our own. Then as far as business operations, I generally take care of sales and marketing, and Chuck takes care of financials. That's kind of our background. I come from the sales side of things, although technical sales, and Chuck is an accountant by trade and education. So that complements us pretty nicely. It's a lot of work for the two of us. We don't farm anything out. So Chuck is up late nights at the end of the quarters and at the end of the year doing the books and tax work. And we're both burning the midnight oil on the projects. And then I take care of the website, do all the invoicing, orders, reservations, that sort of stuff.
And you guys take your research very serious, correct?
We do. We spent, the example I'll give is the one I know best right now is the PA project. So there are over 300 pages of detail notes for just detail notes for the PA project. That doesn't account for the drawings, that doesn't account for the painting, doesn't account for the lettering, just the detail parts.
Yeah, 300 pages rolls off the ton until you have to put them
Until you-
together,
yeah.
figure them all out, and it shows in the end project, though, when you put that much into it.
If you're interested, on our website, I actually have part of the PA detail package up there. You can download it. Customers
Cool.
can download it and take a look at some of the aspects of why the models are going to be unique and what goes into them.
Okay, very cool. Thanks for sharing a little bit with that with
Absolutely.
us. We appreciate it.
Thanks for coming.
Always love being out there with Chuck and Ed. And speaking of, any update on the PAs from UTI?
Yeah, we got good news. So we received the pickup notices. Payment has been made. So we expect those any day now. And we look forward to posting them on our website. So stay tuned for that. We'll have some pictures, and we'll see how those beauties look when they come in the door. Can't wait. Also, on next week's show, we're going to go back out to Ukiah. We're going to, we talked about the hot tip unit. We had it here today. We saw that little segment with Bill Peter. How did it all begin? How did they get involved with these hot tip units? We got a nice little story on that next week.
And we're also going to have part 2 of the section with Reed Dennis. Now, people are familiar, if you've seen the first episode, Reed is a prolific hand-built collector. I think they're going to really enjoy this next segment because Reed talks a little bit about how he started as a venture capitalist, some very interesting stories of when he was flying airplanes, and also from the brass side of things, we have a really nice discussion on these hand-builts, their place in history, and Also, if they were modified, like he has some that were modified by John Lawn, how that might affect them. There's going to be a lot of things I think people that are interested, our viewers in the history of brass, are really going to enjoy in next week's segment.
Yeah, Reed's a really cool guy, Dan. I know we both know him pretty well. We've been out there a few times, but he's just a very interesting gentleman, and just love being able to sit down and chit-chat with him for a little bit. Also, we wanted to bring you up to speed. We know our annual sale has just started this last week, and so it's in full motion. So if you haven't had a chance yet, go to our site at brasstrains.com, click on current specials. That sale is going to be through the month of December, but it will end at the December 31st date, so make sure to take a look at some of the deals that we have on our website.
And if it's not our biggest sale ever, it has to be close, because we have been listing a lot of stuff this last year, so that means a lot of items are going to be in that sale. We're glad you joined us for MME, but now get back on brasstrains.com and shop that sale.
That's it, absolutely.
We'll see you next week on Monday Morning Express. Thanks for joining us.